plight is mostly invisible. The slowly warming seawater, slowly rising up through our porous limestone islands, no longer able to support the slowly dying fish. By the time our plight is made visible for all to see, our luck will have run out. We simply want to live.
The Office of the Prime Minister Press Office is the primary liaison between the Fourth Estate and the Office of the Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Every day, we are working to build a more inclusive economy and a stronger, safer country.
Hear all of the latest developments as the Davis administration carries out the broad mandate of progress and change. Our live weekly press briefings provide full access to current newsmakers on the most topical issues of the day. We facilitate prompt responses from cabinet ministers on the latest reports and get answers on the issues that matter to you.
Will any penalties be levied against the...
OPM Press Now, keeping you in the know. Good morning, members of the press, and of course, those watching on television and online. Welcome to our weekly press briefing here from the Office of the Prime Minister. It's good to see all of you. Now, this morning, as fate would have it, we are joined by three agencies which are closely involved with the management of weather events like the one we are monitoring now in Hurricane Milton, which is just off the coast of Florida. We're joined this morning by Director Rochelle Newbold. She is, of course, the Senior Policy Advisor for Climate Change here in the Office of the Prime Minister. She will give us, which will be the first in a series of updates on the upcoming COP meetings. Of course, she'll be discussing at what stage the Bahamas is in terms of its push on the climate change agenda. She'll also be speaking to a very exciting opportunity being provided by the IDP for business persons in particular, and what that will mean in the whole push for slowing down the climate events that we are confronted with. We will also hear this morning from the Disaster Risk Management Authority. Despite the weather seeming to play cat and mouse with us, there is a report this morning from the DRA. We'll hear from the director, Mr. Aaron Sargent, about what's transpired over the last 24 hours, how the agency has responded, and whatever the latest information is there. And we will speak to Senator Randy Roll in his new role as chairman of the Consumer Protection Commission. He will talk about matters related to that, what are consumers most concerned about, and what the response of the commission is and will continue to be. We will start things off with Director Newbold. Please welcome her.
Good morning, Bahamas. So here we are again, another year, another opportunity for matters relative to climate change to be brought before you. I will speak on three particular issues. One would be the issue regarding our attendance at COP29. The other will be the Loss and Damage Fund Board. And then finally, I will end with a private sector opportunity that is being facilitated through the IDB. So COP29 is scheduled to be held on November 11th to the 22nd in Azerbaijan in the city of Baku. This COP is termed the Climate Finance COP. And I know several times that I've stood up here and I told you climate is about climate finance and where the money at and how we can get access to the money. But this COP is definitely the final, coming to the end of the road on matters relative to climate and climate finance, as during this COP we would need to agree on what they are calling the new quantified collective goal. And that is, last time we had the $100 billion that the developed countries was to pay to the developing countries to assist them in dealing with climate impacts. And this COP, the estimated requirement to assist developing countries of the world is on a tune of $1.1 trillion per year. And that, of course, would require much discussions, much negotiations, and a lot of face-to-face. But I will say that this isn't something that we're starting at this COP. It's something that's been in play for the last 3 years, and we need to, at COP, with the representation of all heads of governments concerned, come to an agreement with respect to that issue. Now, what we are doing, and as it relates to this attendance, is that we're going to have a small but tight delegation that's going to be there, of course, led by the Honorable Prime Minister. And then we will also have the Ministry of Health who's going to be there, as they will be presenting to the world one of the first national health adaptation plans. And so we're very proud to be the country that is going to bring that forth and to be the first in the region, therefore also to be the one responsible for that. And that's also important because we are now appreciating the fact that climate change has significant health impacts on us, not only our senior members of society, but as well as the younger members of society. Before we had all this rain and wind, there was just a lot of broiling heat. And we saw that manifested throughout the world with respect to the melting of the glaciers and floods in Europe, and then in Canada with the forest fires, and in here when you'd be at work and your glasses would be bright and clear and you step out and it fogs up because the heat and the humidity is just unbearable. And that is having a significant effect on how we treat health-related illnesses. And you would have seen during the Muslim jihad, or not jihad, but the Muslims' annual pilgrimage that there were thousands of people who died as they sought to engage in their spiritual activities. But there has been an increase globally in climate-related deaths due to heat. The second thing I want to talk about is the Loss and Damage Fund. The Bahamas was successful in negotiating a seat on the Loss and Damage Fund, and you would note from COP28, everybody agreed finally after 30 years of discussion that we would have such a fund established. That fund was seeded with $800 million, and then that seed is to increase with the additional pledges that are to come forward to aid in dealing with loss and damage, climate-related impacts, be they swift onsets like hurricane or slow impacts like sea level rise, issues related to drought, issues related to soil inability to harvest or produce crops the way it used to because now the soil is saltier, there is no water to facilitate the vegetation. We, Mr. Anthony Ferguson, served as the board member for that, and their major role in this first year was to operationalize that fund. Even though the fund was agreed to, there had to be protocols and programs put in place to show how the fund would operate, what the delivery of the funding that would be coming from the developing nations and other international agencies. And the December of this year would be the final meeting for that fund where the final operationalization procedures would be in place. The fund is established, the board is established to be in the Philippines, which does not mean that the board lives in Philippines, but the Filipino government took on the charge to be the entity that provides the legal identity to the board such that the board can receive funding, they can manage how those funds are utilized, and countries know who they're dealing with when they're making applications. So that was a major win. The fact that we're going to COP with a board and an authority in place is also a major win because our partners would not have provided any additional funding unless we had come to an agreement with that. So that was a great win on our part. And we also shared that opportunity of being on the board with Barbados and Antigua, which speaks to the Caribbean coming together collectively to make sure that we are part of this larger international global representation. So that's always a good thing for us to know. We are still in the game and we are making sure that our voices are heard. And then I also wanted to bring to your attention a $500 million project that's targeted only for the private sector. A lot of times the private sectors would say that they don't get any support, they don't get any aid, they need some assistance. So now the government, hearing your cry, we've made this possible to you. The fund is going to be facilitated through the IDB Invest program, and it's open only to private sector entities who would have to deal with matters relative to climate-related changes, be it mitigation or adaptation for tourism, climate-smart agriculture, sustainable transport, renewable energy, infrastructure development, and matters related to the blue economy. This is a 5-year project, so your project proposals can span anywhere from 1 to 2 years to the full 5-year rollout. We are looking for big projects that'll have large impacts. We're talking about $500 million, okay? So we want people to think big in terms of their project proposals that they're going to submit, keeping in mind that we are not alone in this $500 bid. We also have our colleagues from Trinidad, Barbados, Jamaica, Belize, and the Dominican Republic. So it's a competitive offering. You will have to meet certain criteria. We intend to host a virtual online consultative process the week of October 28th, and you would need to respond to let us know, to send you the invite by sending us an email at cceau@bahamas.gov.bs. Once we receive your email, you will receive an invite with the link to be able to participate in the virtual online consultative process. So these 3 things I wanted to bring to you in the first instance. Do we have any questions?
Good morning, President Gerald from our news. As it relates to COP29 and the loss and damage fund eventually becoming operational, are you able to say when we could possibly see that happen, considering, like we've already been saying, hurricanes are getting worse? Like we've already mentioned, we're seeing fires, droughts, and all these different things that are impacting climate change. When do we hope to see actual, tangible evidence from the loss and damage fund? And first.
Right. So you're asking when can we seek to make an application to address a particular need, right? So as I said, the final meeting for the fund to operationalize and concretize all the procedures will be in December, and it is during that meeting that they will make a determination as to when and what would trigger your ability to access the fund. It will not be that anybody could just access the fund. For instance, with Hurricane Beryl coming through, those countries that were tapped along the Caribbean borders, that they would have been able to make application to the fund after having done an assessment, quantifying what the loss was, and then the funding would have been given to them to address their need. I do not wish to mislead the public into thinking that the loss and damage fund is going to say, if we had Hurricane Dorian now, then the loss and damage fund would have given us $3.4 billion. Right? Because remember, what I said was the loss and damage fund was seeded with $800 million. COP29, we're asking under the new quantified funding mechanisms for $1.1 trillion per year for our developed countries. And so they, of course, would need to make sure that we do all the necessary financial fiduciary things are in place, like all the checks and balances, because they have to be assured that when countries make application for these fundings, once the application is true, the need has been verified, and there is a pipeline in which those fundings can be provided to address that particular need.
Is there a concern? I know that this concern has been expressed before about how, I guess, long these processes can be for you to actually get the funding if you are applying or successful. I mean, while you're not on the board, but are you able to say if that's something that's been
I sit as an advisor to the board members, and I can tell you the Caribbean did indeed bring that matter up. We need for there to be a rapid response fund that is set aside for countries so that they don't have to go through the long, drawn-out process to wait for funding to be made available. And it was because of the intervention of the Caribbean that the board is going to have like a 2-tranche approach, one where immediate needs can be addressed, because people would need shelter, water, sanitation, those things that need to be immediately provided. So the fund will provide those sorts of things, and then there will be the long-term infrastructure rebuilding, the reestablishment of certain programs and things like that would be the secondary one.
And my last question. I know the Prime Minister expressed, I guess, disappointment appointment, as well as other regional leaders like the Prime Minister from Barbados, in terms of the movement on the loss and damage fund. And I think at his last address, the fact that at this point it's only $800 million. While you do sit as an advisor, are you able to say what the response has been like from other world leaders in terms of actually contributing to this at the level that they should? I know you mentioned the $1.1 trillion per year.
Right, and so when you start waving around $1.1 trillion per year, everybody's starting to sit small. Ain't nobody got nothing to say. It's like pulling teeth, to be honest. It's like pulling teeth to get them to give, because now, say for instance, Helena Milton, the United States could be like, oh, we have climate impacts too. We need to address our needs as well. And I mean, and the Prime Minister had said almost 2 years ago, we are always going to be on the front lines. And the front lines mean like what you feeling now, we have been feeling. And notwithstanding the fact that you are contributing to this issue, you would see new reports coming out that's saying that we have overshot the 1.5. Ain't no turning back. That means we're looking to see more and intense, longer, hotter days, more droughts and fires, and our partners are not seemingly doing enough to abate this process. So we know going to Baku, this can be a fight. This will be a fight. And we also are calling our partners out on the fact that you are pumping money into wars. And we all talking about we're living on one global planet, but you staunching when we're asking you for funding to address the global environmental issues. And so if we are not there, and I know behemoths always say, why are we traveling? Listen, if you ain't there to prick them, to kick them, to shake them, they can continue with doing what they're doing, and they can forget all about us. And I always draw attention to the island of Tuvalu. Most behemoths don't know nothing but Tuvalu. Most people in the world don't know nothing but Tuvalu. But Tuvalu is an island that's sinking right now. For them, sea level rise is now. And so you can imagine a whole country of people needing to find someplace else to live. So they are always there making that noise, shaking that basket, creating the discomfort. We cannot let our developed partners to just sit in ease, have meetings, and nobody there calling them out on the thing. That's important for us. Well, Zadness.
Yes, good morning, Ms. Newbold, Devontae Arnold from Zadness, yeah. Looking at the impact of Hurricane Milton, we saw where local authorities in Florida would have encouraged residents to evacuate. And seeing how intense these hurricanes are becoming and how quickly they are developing, if a hurricane of that magnitude were to come here to Nassau, what will be the plan? Would there be a mass evacuation? And is the government now discussing a place with a country or a different island where residents here in Providence can evacuate to?
So I'm glad that my colleague from DRA will be up next, where he will share with you guys, and I know sometimes we forget, we've had recent legislation that has passed that addresses the issue of evacuation. We are thankful that we have never experienced a hurricane that came straight up the Bahamas and tapped every island as it went, which in that case would require a significant consideration about, well, what do we do when everything is hit, and particularly if New Providence is hit. But there has been considered discussions about how we are going to address this issue if our partners continue to not be very deliberate and competitive in addressing the needs to decrease the greenhouse gas emissions, because it's because of these greenhouse gas emissions that we are seeing an increase in sea level temperatures, right? Sea temperatures. And because of the sea surface temperatures, we are gonna get the hurricanes to become more frequent and more deliberate. I also wanna use that as a plug also to say that Bahamians, your consumption habits also are lending itself to those things. When we as consumers choose to buy items that contribute to sea level rise by having higher greenhouse gas emitters, because, oh, how much for this AC? There's only $300 or there's only $100 and it's cheap, but it doesn't have a high efficiency rate, right? And you hot, so you will run that all day, which means that as it stands right now, BPL gotta keep pumping out more and more power every year to meet the demand, and right now BPL is using a lot of fossil fuels to do that, so we're contributing to that. Even though we do have a plan, right? We have the New Energy Era program that's being rolling out. We're switching BPL to renewable energy, but you, with the same inefficient AC, is still gonna be pulling a lot of energy demand from it. We need to think smart, right? Things are being offloaded in the Caribbean, technology that is going to become obsolete. And you could be sitting there with that in your house having invested money in something that you can no longer use, right? So we also have to be smart consumers and buy things that make sense. Buy upgrades of technology that not just the phone and the tablet, but other things that make sense in terms of the refrigeration that you buy, the air conditioning, anything that heats or cools. You need to look at the efficiency rating. And it may require you to hold back for a couple of months to get that little bit of extra dollars. Do that, because that is a technology that will outlast the cheap old technology that people are dumping and making available in the Caribbean. As Caribbean leaders, we all see it happening. I talk about these cheap Japanese cars. In a couple of years, when there will be no parts because the manufacturers of them are no longer manufacturing those parts by 2030, then what are we going to do with that, folks? And we are trying to address this issue too by improving our public transportation system, because we know that is something that we're going to have to make sure that that's available for individuals. But we also know it requires some improvement, and I can tell you, we have a plan. We're working on it. We ain't going to tell you yet, but we can come back and let you know.
You mentioned those high efficiency appliances. Has there been a recommendation from your side of the fence to the government to possibly reduce taxes on those?
I'm glad you asked. We do indeed have an initiative that will be rolled out in 2025. So the first quarter of 2025, there are low emission initiatives that are going to be rolled out that address getting yourself some solar panels on your house, dealing with efficiency appliances that are for your business and residential. You gotta make it a two-prong approach. And we understand everything going up except your salary, right? So we understand that, and we are indeed looking to roll those tax exempt items out for you to be able to take advantage of. And also giving fair enough warning in a program so that people can save up, because some of these things may not be able to be fixed all year. Just like how we do with hurricane season. If a hurricane comes through, you could bring in wood and plywood and all that duty free. So there may be periods of times when there will be a spectrum of time where you'll be able to bring that stuff in. All that does is allow you to get into that ASU, to raise that money, so when that period comes along, you can make that switch.
I know that usually with climate change initiatives like this, participating countries would have had to either make certain policy changes or would have to make them. So can you say what policy changes are either on the agenda or have already been made to make participation in this possible?
Right, so under the Climate Change and Carbon Markets Initiative Act, in that act, it says that the Prime Minister has the responsibility to develop initiatives that would aid in addressing a decrease in the CO2 emissions in the country. So under that act, we are about to roll out regulations in 2025 that would lay out that program of work so people would be able to take advantage of it under the law.
And can you speak, I guess go into a bit more kind of details as to the terms and conditions of the participation in the program?
Everybody would have, like I said, it's a two-prong approach. There are the residential applicants and then there are the business owners, right? So we know from our energy data scheme that there are two levels of consumption. While we all to work, the businesses are drawing the biggest energy usage. When we all knock off, the residents are drawing the most in terms of energy usage. So the initiative will speak to the provision of support to both spectrums, the commercial and the residential, and it also goes as far as looking at giving special consideration to those social safety net agencies like the Princess Rogers Home for the Aged, the Ranfurly Home for Children, where those sorts of things aren't necessarily tied to independent commercial benefits, meaning that they'll have to have balls to raise money and all this stuff, things that they do. So giving them an additional break so that they would be able to upgrade their infrastructure to be able to take care of our young people and our citizens who need that additional support. So we've tried to look at the broad spectrum of things in that regard. And I want Bahamians to have an understanding when we say something will no longer be allowed in country or something must meet a criteria in order to be in country. We cannot continue to cut off our nose to spite our faces, and we cannot continue to feed you when you need to learn how to fish. We are 51. We grown now, people. And we need to start to act as a country who has met its maturity mark and do what we as a people know we can do. The strength of this country is the people. And if the people stand up and do what they need to do and assist, I always try to tell people when they say, well, the government damn, who is the government? Y'all is the government. And y'all need to work with the government as it seeks to roll out things. We have had several meetings with private sector to find out, to get ideas as to what should be in this initiative, right? And when we say we're making opportunity for the private sector, send an email to this email account, send the email to this email account so that we can easily facilitate you. Don't call me on my cell. That ain't the email account. Send the email to the email account so we can keep you in the loop so that you would be able to know. And you saw at the beginning of this press conference, they talked about the sustainable shores. This is a new product that we're rolling out as well to educate Bahamians about opportunities, about programs, about policies that are in existence that they may not know about. So I also encourage you to follow that program of work so that you could be alerted to things that are coming down the pike.
That this initiative is going to be open to residents and businesses throughout the Bahamas, right? Can you speak to the importance of family island companies, especially participating in this initiative?
If people want to save money, you never have to tell people what to do when it's time to save money. This isn't restricted to Grand Bahama or New Providence. All of we is one. It's everybody who wants to partake of it. It's open to everybody. There will be an application form. You will indicate what your needs are. For businesses, you could even indicate what your development program is for your business. This year we'll be doing this, next year we will be doing this. And once we see that you have a clear vision for what you are doing, we will seek to offer assistance to ensuring that you can meet that acumen. Long ago are the days where you felt that you could not advance because somebody could thief your idea, right? Everybody has an opportunity here. We're making those opportunities available to everybody. We're putting it out there. We're telling everybody, and we're telling everyone how to access it. But I also want to say, the same time I'm telling you it's open to everybody, I cannot say that you can't call your friend. There ain't gonna be nobody who you could call. There's 500 million. You're gonna either meet the requirements or you're not gonna meet the requirements. And no phone call is gonna fix it because this money is being provided by international donors. And one thing international donors always give small island states a hard rap for is not adhering to the rules or procedures once they have agreed to lend the money. And so as not to cause us to be disadvantaged by mismanagement, this is all we're gonna do, is do it by the rules and procedures, which will be clearly and transparently shared with everybody so that they can know what to do. So again, the email to participate in this private sector initiative, cceau@bahamas.gov.bs. People, let's follow the rules, let's make sure everything is in place so that we can all benefit from what's being rolled out here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Newbold. Well, we're going to move now to another timely topic. The issue of the cost of goods and services has been in the news lately, especially with inflation and all of the other world events which affect the price of goods worldwide. This morning, we're going to talk to Senator Randy Roll. He is chair of the Consumer Protection Commission, newly minted in that position. So he's going to talk about issues ranging from the cost of goods, bread basket items, services, what rights consumers have, and what their recourse is through the commission in the event that things go awry. Please welcome Senator Roll.
Thank you very much. Ishla. A pleasant good day to everyone. My recent appointment, just under 2 months ago by Prime Minister the Honorable Philip Edward Davis as Executive Chairman of the Consumer Protection Commission has been a very eventful experience. Through the CPC, though the CPC is small, it has a significant impact. Initially, I thought that this role would be lighter, but the joke was on me. I quickly realized that consumer protection legislation is one of the most complex frameworks in the Bahamas. One of the biggest challenges facing consumer protection laws is its enforcement. However, my track record would reflect I am always up for a challenge and can assure you that the CPC will be flexing its legislative muscles in the ensuing months. The CPC's complaint statistics indicate that in January of 2024 to date, we have already processed approximately 334 complaints, which has surpassed all previous year-end records. While we have been very successful in resolving most matters, of the 334 figures this third quarter, 36 were referred to more appropriate agencies. Our goal is to improve collaboration with agencies like the Clearing Banks Association, Bahamas Bureau of Standards, Price Control, and IRCA to avoid the duplication of efforts and streamline resolutions. The CPC has seen a rise in anonymous complaints this year, as well with 22 consumers opting to not file official complaints due to fear of backlash. We want to foster a trusting relationship with consumers and encourage you to share your bad experiences and bring violators to our attention for the betterment of the disadvantaged. Our data also shows a rise in complaints against local shipping companies, with 32 complaints followed by construction companies, food stores, utilities, and auto parts stores. Consumers should ensure businesses are registered and always keep receipts. Lack of business license is a major red flag. Consumers are advised to do whatever it is within their power to ensure that a provider is legitimate and to keep the receipts when making purchases. The Commission's efforts to investigate any complaint will be hampered if consumers fail to adhere to these basic warnings. We've also noticed issues with home-based carriers that lack verifiable locations. To address these concerns, we will focus on our one sector each month, starting with shipping companies. In October, with a targeted social media campaign. Let me be clear, the CPC does not aim to put small businesses out of business. We want carriers to thrive. Carriers' efficiency and reliability make them a popular choice for both businesses and individuals who need to deliver quickly and securely. And I am of the view that the primary objective of the Consumer Protection Commission is to actually build relationships with all stakeholders. Consumers first, of course, but providers and other regulatory agencies also. That is why we have already engaged with them to understand the root consumer complaints. Our investigations will take a broader look across the supply chain to better understand the causes of losses, damages, or delays. Our work will continue as we pursue violations, provide relief to consumers, and deter future wrongdoings. By 2025, we aim to increase complaints by 580 to 600 through more outreach efforts, both online and in person. In conclusion, as I have already highlighted, the importance of retaining receipts, Consumers, I must re-emphasize the special significance of doing this during the hurricane season. There is a heightened risk of scams and price gouging, as some providers will attempt to take full advantage of you during a crisis. We encourage you to go ahead and make your urgent purchases, but there will be repercussions for any provider who is proven to have engaged in violating your rights. Thank you to the press for your support and to the Davis administration and Minister Alcides for backing the CPC's efforts. Together, we will ensure the Bahamian economy works for everyone, especially the most vulnerable. Thank you.
Can you give us a breakdown, or at least say what was the most common or highest rates of complaints you got in that statistics?
Okay, well, according to our records, number one was, again, the shipping companies, carrier companies. Number two were persons in the construction field, people complaining about shabby work ethics, followed closely by hardware stores, and then utility companies. Now, what we've also done is we have, in our efforts, we are starting to meet with a number of the other agencies. For example, there's been some complaints as it relates to electronics, and so where there is a need for IRCA and other companies, we try to bring them on board so that together we can solve it. But we also have taken on the approach to do follow-ups as well. You know, sometimes we will refer people to other agencies but never follow up. So our team is working, making a special effort to follow up on such things as that as well.
There was a rise. Can you see the margin of the increase and explain what are the complaints people have been giving? Because I know a lot of the complaints people have been saying online is they're charging this amount of money, but that amount of money is exorbitantly higher than how much the actual package weighed when they received it.
Yeah, well, mostly of it has been about that, and then there's been a lot of lost packages. And certainly customers want to know that once their package is lost, it's resolved in a timely manner. Of course, people have been complaining as well too about not being able to get refunds when they're lost packages and the time that it takes. And so what we've done as a commission, we've gone last week, we took the opportunity to visit, I think, about 8 or 9 companies so far to get an understanding of what their processes are and simply walk them through what we think it should be and try to identify where is the issue and how best we can go solve it. Also with me here today, I have my manager for complaints and investigations, Davis, my marketing team as well too. So, you know, this is something that we've been trying to compile in our efforts to make sure that consumers feel better in the process of getting goods and services.
How much that increase was with these companies, the complaints that have been coming in, or can you give an estimate that is?
I don't have a number, but that is something that I can get to you in short order. So again?
15 last year.
15 last year. Okay, so it's 15 last year.
Good morning, Montana from ZNS. Does the government feel satisfied with the adjustment in minimum wage, considering that we've seen an increase in BPL bills, an increase in NIB, as well as a new increase in gas prices?
Does the government feel satisfied?
Do you feel that the consumer has truly benefited from that increase in minimum wage?
I think, again, that's something that it's a start. Certainly the government, I'm sure, will review it and then make adjustments where need to be. But that's definitely something that can be answered by Minister Alcides.
Has the Consumer Protection Department given any suggestions to the government to raise that, or?
Not at this time. Again, this is something that we will look at, and certainly we will report our findings to the minister, but it's something that we plan to work very closely with Minister Alcides on as well. Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.
The Disaster Risk Management Authority has joined us. It appears that we've escaped some of the worst possibilities that we, were forecasting in terms of the effects of Hurricane Milton. Nonetheless, the DRM has pulled an all-nighter, I understand, to make sure everyone was safe. They will give us a report this morning and tell us what action has been taken in the interest of Bahamians who had issues. Let me introduce to you Mr. Aaron Sargent of the DRM. Welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Communications have been made with all Family Island administrators as of 9 a.m. This morning. And we were in constant contact with all administrators over the course of the night. Most of them would have manned their incident command centers and EOCs throughout the night. There were no significant reports of damage. Each Island's Incidents Command Center and Family Island administrators continue to discharge their duties admirably. We would like to thank these administrators, their disaster risk management consultative committees, and the members of their emergency support functions for their diligent efforts and swift action. I have to admit, I have been very impressed with the level of commitment of these administrators. As you know, based on the Disaster Risk Management Act, the legislation discharges the duties of disaster risk management to Family Island administrators on each Family Island. In each of my interactions with them, they have demonstrated dedication to their safety of their communities and have gone above and beyond to enact rapid and effective solutions to each challenge they have faced. Family Island administrators, namely Mr. Kenwood Cartwright, Bridget Knowles, Leonard Dames Jr., Sean Rose Thompson, Stephen Wilson, Ricardo Ferguson, Kathy Ann Ferguson, and Evac Arthur. Based on alert number 16 on Hurricane Milton issued by the Department of Meteorology, Thursday, October 10th at 9 a.m., Hurricane Milton was downgraded to a Category 1 in the early hours of October 10th as the center left the east coast of Florida. Peak winds are in excess of 50 miles per hour, were recorded in West End and Hopetown, Abaco over the night. Rain bands are currently affecting the northern Bahamas. Milton is moving toward the northeast near 18 miles per hour, and this general motion is expected to continue today. Gradual weakening is expected in the forecast throughout the day. A tropical storm warning remains in effect for the islands of the northern Bahamas, which includes Grand Bahama, the Abacos, and Bimini. Just an update on public works and utilities. In Sweetingski, there was a loss of electricity and water supply. BPL and water and sewage crews will provide an update on the restoration. In West End, there were reports on Tuesday of blocked drains. The Ministry of Works actively engaged contractors to clear those drains, and all drains were cleared. And from our latest reports from the administrator out of West End, that drainage clearing was a real help to allowing the flood waters to recede very quickly. So they were pretty pleased with that. Just an update on shelters. The Moore Primary School has 1 occupant. St. George's High School has 1 occupant. 8 Mile Rock Gymnasium has 5 occupants. Christ the King Special Needs Shelter has 1 occupant. Those activated shelters are all open until the Department of Meteorology advises otherwise in terms of the tropical storm warning. In Bimini, both BTC and Alive communication have been lost. Both companies have been contacted and advised that crews have been mobilized and will provide an update. We have since been able to be in contact with the administrator, Mr. Vac Arthur, through the use of a sat phone. We are waiting for further updates from her, but there seems to be reports of minimal damage as well. At their shelter, the Lewis McDonald shelter has 1 occupant. In Abaco, Moores Island has lost communications and electricity. Utility companies have been appraised and will provide an update on restoration. The shelter in Abaco Central Pines, Abaco Primary School is fully activated and open with no occupants. Thankfully, the impacts have been minimal thus far. However, the DRM and the respective island incident command centers remain activated and ready until the storm has passed. We remind all residents that a tropical storm warning remains in effect and to continue to exercise caution until the all clear is given. Thank you.
The special OPM DRM press conference that happened, I think, on Tuesday. I don't know if we're able to say our DRM as a part of those efforts. I know the things that administrative they were looking to, I think what happened in parking lot. Is that something DRM will be a part of?
Say the question again for me. You said if we are part of.
If I'm curious, I know that if you're able to say what administrative efforts DRM will be lent to looking into investigating hurricane-related deaths during Hurricane Dorian. Is that something DRM will be part of? Or that's something
That's something that doesn't come under our remit. As you would know, the DRM authority was enacted April 15th this year and operationalized July 1. So that predates our work.
Thank you very much. DRM. I think I can help a little bit with that question, Ariel. The Prime Minister did indicate that queries related to Hurricane Dorian would be dealt with administratively. And what he meant by that is that the relevant agencies, whether it's the police, the Defense Force, or what have you, will look into areas related to their, the scope of their oversight to determine where the problems were and how we will deal with them so that we don't have, similar recurrences at the same level should we experience something like this again.
Can you give me what those efforts would look like? Because I know that it felt like too much details were given to the press on that question. I mean, I wasn't there, but just to explain what that would look like.
Well, I've explained what it meant. I can't give you many more details about what will actually happen at this point. But it is a work in progress. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, unless you wanted to. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon.